G'day, I'm Greg and welcome to the shed. Time for a talking turkey. As you've gathered, because you haven't heard from me, those of you that watch me regularly anyway, I've been out and about and away, and I'll be in town for a few days and then I'm out again. But we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff that I've bought, and we'll talk a little bit more about some stuff that I've used since I bought it. As you can tell, it's a bit wet and it's a bit rainy here in the shed. Rain on the tin roof, which can be good and it can be damn annoying. So, the grease gun that we talked about last time. It's had about 40 cartridges of grease, 30 or 40 cartridges of grease go through it. It has a couple of characteristics. You'll notice that there's grease wicking out of it. Yes, it does that. It does weep grease through the threads, whips grease out the back. So we'll just take a little bit of pressure off it. There we go. Now it's not under pressure, with a bit of luck it'll stop leaking. Now that I've put so many cartridges of grease through it, I've got a pretty good idea what I like about it and what I don't like about it, says me looking at the grease on my hand. What do I like about it? Oh man, it is, or woman, it is so much better than doing it with the old trigger action grease gun. It's easier, go through 3, 4, 5 cartridges of grease in probably as many, 3 or 4 hours. I was about to say in about as many hours, and what I found was that it'd do that on a single battery with the Makita cordless tech screw gun, which is what I used on it. That was good, pressure's good, and it's good tactile. Yeah, tactile's not the right word, but it's got good instinctive feedback as it loads up on the rattle gun or on the impact gun. It actually starts to chatter, and that tells you that you're putting pressure, or you've got pressure in the system. It's coming up on the seals. It tells you that you've got a grease line that's pretty heavily blocked. It just gives you that instinctive feel that you get with the handgun, or it did to me anyway. So I like that. There's a couple of characteristics about it I don't like. This is one of them. When you push it in, it goes in. Unlike the McNaught gun, and we'll talk about McNaught guns because they're pretty much a benchmark as far as I'm concerned as a high quality gun. They're an expensive gun. They're the gun I have most experience with, and they're a good gun. They're a very good gun. On the shaft on the McNaught, you can rotate it 90 degrees and you push on it and you can pressurise the chamber. What that does is it helps push any air trapped up here through the chamber. That's a great feature. This doesn't have that feature. What it means is when you've got an airlock, you've got an airlock. And when you've got an airlock, you've got a pane. So to get the air out, you can purge the air out here. That's great. But what you can't get is in here you actually have, and we'll have a look here. In here you actually have the piston, which is pretty much the same as what you got on your McNaught guns and your other lever action guns or your pistol grip guns, but you've got your plunger in here, and you've got a check valve and a spring up in this area. And what happens is it gets an airlock, and all it does is pump the air and it doesn't pump any grease. So it's 3/5 to 5/8 of not very good at all. Yeah, I know, you know what I was going to say. But, so what I had to do is I had to walk around with a 5mm Allen key so that I could take this out, pull the trigger, purge the air, put it back in again, and away I could go and grease again. It's a pain. It is a pain. And so what I am going to do is later on, maybe not in this video because there's a time issue associated with it, I'll make up a little knurled knobby that I can wind in and out so I don't have to carry it with me. So that's a bit of an issue. Now, the other problem is until I worked that out, what I ended up doing was I ended up pulling this apart so that I could find out what was going on, and we might even pull it out apart and give you a bit of a AVE type look at how it works. It's pretty simple, pretty reliable, pretty robust. I want to say pretty adequately robust is probably a better way of putting it. But by gee, for $100, which is less than what it would cost me for the pistol grip McNaught, which I'll show you, we'll look at in a little while. I say look at, I'm not going to strip it because I converted it to an oil gun instead of a grease gun. Yeah. The problem with the McNaught is that you've got to squeeze the trigger and it kills your hand. That's the problem with the McNaught, and that's the only problem with the McNaught. The having to remove the clamp off the body every time you want to change a cartridge, because remember the grease cartridge has to be loaded from the front because I've got the flange on them, so you can't feed them in from the back. Because the flange is on the front, you've got to feed it in from the front, which means you've got to take the clamp off, you've got to take the gun apart. Well, tough luck. That's a characteristic of it that I knew when I bought it. Yes, it is a little bit time consuming, and it's worth every second for reducing the wear and tear on your hands. The little plastic cappy that was on here lasted 1.5 days before it snapped off. Guys at Makita, if you're going to build something, if you're going to make something like that, at least make it so that it lasts a week, or leave it off altogether. You're better off not having it. You know, I haven't pulled it off. It is worse than annoying when you get something like that. Oops, sorry about it. I just hit the stand. Just hit the tripod, which Emma's successfully managed to eliminate from her machine shop, from her spare room machine shop. Don't even bother with it. Don't even bother making it. It's not worth the additional grief and drama of putting it on there if it's going to last a day or a day and a half. We don't buy these things unless we're going to use them a lot. So, yeah, the grease running out. By the way, this grease is not a cheap grease. It's a quality name brand grease. I like it. It's really good bearing grease. We use it a lot on the, I'll say we use it a lot. We use it all the time on the stackers and the conveyors. This rain's going to get heavy, so I'll turn off and I'll come back later. Okay, it stopped raining and we're back again. We'll just have a quick look at the McNaught lever action gun, and you can see roughly how much stroke we get on the piston. This one hasn't got much grease in it at the moment. We can pull that out. Well, so we can pull it out. We're not going to get too carried away with it. These aren't a bad gun. I actually quite like them. I've spent a fair bit of time on these. But that just gives you, what we're really looking at here is the size of the piston. And what we'll do is we'll compare it to the size of the piston in this one, which is about the same. The stroke's about the same. get that out of the way. So what we have here is me not being properly prepped. Back in a sec. Okay, we're back again. Now, what happens? I'll take that plug out and I'll push up on this, and out comes our spring, and on the end of our spring we have something that I can see quite clearly, but I don't know if you can. We have a tapered seat, and the back of the plunger, and that goes into the spring. And I haven't had a look down there because it's all full of grease, but I think we can fairly safely assume that, yep, that doesn't want to go all the way through. So down in here somewhere, if I could be bothered cleaning it all out, and I'm not pushing on the piston because I'm not pushing the piston out the bottom. Down under there's a tapered seat. We'll put that back in. This is what I'm often trying to do in the dark, also in the dark at night, running around trying to pull this out, put it back in, pull triggers, purge air out. On the front side here, we'll put this back in a little bit. On the front side here, what we have is we have our little eccentric, which goes together with our people messaging me, with our little powder. This is powder technology. We have a thrust plate which actually sits on top of that, like this. So what we will do is we will drop that in there because it's easier to put it in there. This gets washed out occasionally because it gets, I'll say occasionally, gets a bit of gunk in it. The environment is not completely dirt resistant, for want of a better way of putting it. So I probably should lift that up, and I'll come back and I'll do it again later. I won't. I'm in here. I'll do it properly. I'll do it once, do it properly. Good thing there's plenty of grease handy. There we go. This will get well and truly spread around as it's working. I'll pull this out again because I was going to pull it out again, but what we'll do is we'll just put a little bit on this bottom face here, more than a little bit. When you look at the amount of wetness that was running out of this grease, you wouldn't expect to see that. So that's more than enough lubrication. It's probably more than too heavy. We've got this nice little moulded plastic cap which just sits in there. It seems to do an adequate job of sealing it. This works, or when I say it works, it has been worked in a very dirty iron ore environment. And when you look at the iron ore environment, there's nothing about iron ore that's clean. So I'll just spin these down. They don't need to be super robust, they don't hold the town together. And yes, I'm hearing it should all be washed up and cleaned up and blah blah blah. I haven't got 2 days to muck around, we've got to get on with it. Now, this here is a little bit of a concern. We've got this build up of oxide, which I can't think of any reason why it should be there. We've got a little planetary gear set in here which spins around, and I think it's got about 1/10 of the amount of lubrication in it that it should have. I think it's far too dry. I'm trying to give you a bit of a look at it while I'm pilfering a bit of grease out of the head here. Sticking that in. And we'll put a bit more down the centre hole here. Which, leaving that there is not going to give me a huge issue, because we're now going to feed it through with the planetary unit. That will probably be adequate. Rear bearing, so there's a front bearing here and a rear bearing to support the loads from what you're using as a drive mechanism. This was a little bit tight when it came off, and that's not a bad thing, because what it tells me is that it is reasonably dust resistant. And looking inside there, apart from that unexplained build-up on the shaft, that's what I see. I see more or less what I expect to see. And the camera's in the wrong spot. So, just swing these around. A slightly out of focus self-tapper, as you would expect. It's important to have the occasional hole on your bench in the right spot. This bench has a big hole in the centre of it, so that I can drop shafts and such like through. Having a hole like this means that I can actually put stuff down and put some pressure on it. Okay, so we just going to nip that a little bit. There we go. Cool. Now, something else I notice about this, you notice the depth of section here compared to the depth of section there. What that means is it does a couple of things. It collects a lot of dirt in there, and every time I'm changing a cartridge I'm having to clean it. And because it collects dirt in there, what it also means is that it collects dirt back around here, and so again I'm having to clean the threads out, because as you unwind it you actually pull it back through the dirt. Now, when you get, let's get this thread clean. When you get into dirty environments, just because you're working in dirty environments doesn't mean that you have to be a dirty worker. That's my opinion for what it's worth. There we go. It's adequate. And so there we are, it's back together. Now, apart from those couple of little issues that I've spoken about, it's a great gun. Would I buy another one? Yeah, at the money. These two are about the same price. This one here I modified, it doesn't have the handle on it, because this one's actually been converted to an oil gun. Means I've got to use it upside down. It's actually full of oil for the shaper at the moment, which I will get back to putting some videos up on. This is the handle that came out. The spring's not in there. Actually, I'll tell a lie, the spring is in there. The spring's holding the butt cap in place. But what happens on these is there's this, there you go, you can see that. When you pull it back on that, then you can rotate it 90 degrees and you can push back and it'll push the plunger and help you expel the air or push the air through the pumping mechanism. It's a great feature. It's a shame it's not in this. It's a shame that there is, let's get it back in the shot. It's a shame that there is nothing here to help you purge the air out of the pumping chamber. It's an issue. It is an issue. But it's one that you can live with using that, or you can do what I was talking about and make up another plug for this with a knurl on it, which is what I'll probably do. Or if you're out in the bush, put a big nut on it, weld it. As long as you've got something you can grab it with your hands. You can put a pair of pliers, if you keep gripping it with a pair of pliers, you'll knurl it anyway. So that's that. Alright, we'll turn you off and we'll talk about a couple other things when I come back. Okay, can't remember if I spoke to you about it last time. If I did, I'm sorry. But I'm not going to go and have a look and see whether I did talk to you about it or not. Makita cordless die grinder. 109 bucks I think it was for this. The short snout one's 120, in round numbers it's 109, 119, something like that. The long shank is cheaper than the short shank. Only had to use it once while I was away. Paid for itself in about, as far as I was concerned, half an hour. I don't get paid any extra for using it, but what it does is it looks after me. No good as a tool post grinder. Everything's rubber and flexible. You'd have to spend a lot of time tying stuff down to stabilise it to the degree of accuracy that you really want. And apart from that, I don't need to. I've got a Bosch one. But yeah, I like it. It's very handy and it's great being portable. Okay, lumper tool steel, along with its mate. Now, a story. I bought this off eBay. These are 1 inch by 12 inch Osborne Super Mushet. I'm assuming it's Mushet. It might be Mushet, M-U-S-H-E-T, or Musha. But I'm assuming it's Mushet. So if someone knows the correct pronunciation, I'd be quite happy to find out what it is. 723. I've got 732, but it's 723. Yeah, 723. Now, if you do some research on Robert Mushet, you'll find that he is basically the father of tool steel. He is basically unknown. but when he was the brains behind all high-speed steels, I say all, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit there. Do some research on him. Very interesting individual. Absolutely brilliant. This steel was probably developed around, well, not probably developed, his first high-speed steel was developed in the 1870s, 1880s, and this here was definitely developed prior to 1900. Now, the story is, I bought these off eBay, and they were meant to be triple Musha, triple Musha, and they turned up and they weren't. Now, things happen. These are brand new, never used, but they've come from a clearinghouse. The clearinghouse is C-Tool. And all I've got to say about them is the way they handled my inquiry. I said, this isn't quite as described. It was meant to be triple, and it's not. The response I got back, very quick, more than adequate. I've dealt with them before, never had any issues, and I will be dealing with them again. Lots and lots of items. More than happy to deal with them. The difference between a good seller and a bad seller is how they handle, well, firstly they've got their descriptions right, but how they handle your queries and your responses, in my opinion. And the most difficult part in business is recovering successfully from an issue. Guys, go to C-Tool, C-Tool, and have a look at their stuff. They also under Tooling Station, I think it is. They're in Australia. Lots of stuff. Very good stuff. Not the cheapest, don't get me wrong, they're not the cheapest, but they're fair, and I would highly recommend them. And I'm not getting paid anything. I just find them good to deal with. So yeah, obviously now that I've got two of these, in the near future there's going to have to be a video on making tools for shapers and more on tooling geometry, as to why I like using a lot of negative rate geometry, which some people don't like, they get quite frightened about. But for those of you that have been watching my other videos and you see what happens when you're using negative rate geometry and your job comes loose, it doesn't bite in and throw it across the room. When you're using a shaper as powerful as mine, you can do a lot of damage using positive rate geometry. So what I have found though is that with negative rate geometry, it's very hard to get a cut at less than 10th thou. It just slides over the surface. So we're going to have to start doing some positive rate geometry on some of the tooling. We're going to have to get rid of a lot of this relief here, because on the shaper there's not too often that you want more than about 3 or 4 degrees of a clearance angle, because the more you've got to support your cutting edges, the better. I could actually put this in the shaper now and just use it. The machine's got enough power, and I must admit that I'm half tempted to do that, but it would be ideal, says me out of shot, rubbing my finger along here, it'd be ideal to put a bit of side clearance on it. So this one might just end up with a bit of side clearance, and we might just flatten the bottom off, and it will just be a brutal tool. It'll be a brutal roughing tool. If I get really carried away, we might put a large radius on it and see if we can make some really big heavy chips. but that means I'll have to give it a really big heavy lump of iron to do it with, which I've got a piece of 100 by 100 billet there. It's 100 by 100, and by memory it's 350 or 450 MPa material. So we can get into that. I've also got some 450 MPa parallel flange here, which we might have we might just take to a piece of that just to tear it up, just for the fun. Some days you just got to have fun. But it'll be interesting to see how much the machine will cut before the belt starts slipping. Yeah, I know. Alright folks, that will conclude this video. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your subscriptions. And hopefully I'll get I'll extract my digit and we'll get some more shaper videos going soon. The lathe's done a little bit of work, but stuff that I can't show you. It'd be nice to, but I can't. It's done a couple of interesting jobs. The mill's parked up. There's a couple of interesting tools turning up, bought out of our Asian friends. One of them is, actually they're both very cheap for what they are, but one in particular is extremely cheap, and I'm going to do a bit of a quality check on that just to see how close it is or it isn't. At the price I paid for it, it's worth it taking a chance on it, because even if it isn't, I can turn it into something else anyway. So and I can't lose purchase regardless. So thanks for watching again, and have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.